Dear students, today again I am back with the third chapter of class 12th biology, that is human reproduction. In this PPT, I am going to deal with menstrual cycle, implantation, embryonic development and parturition. Starting with the menstrual cycle, how can we define it? It is a reproductive cycle in female primates, and in humans it starts at puberty and is known as menarche. It ends at the age of 45 to 50 years. We call it menopause. So here the period between the menarche and menopause is the fertility period or the reproductive period in human females. Menstrual cycle is of 28 days. It is completed in 4 phases. The first one is the menstrual phase. Menstrual phase, it occurs after 28 days of the menstrual cycle. In this phase, the degenerated endometrial lining, the mucus-coated ruptured blood vessels and unfertilized ovum are released from the vagina in human females. Immediately after this phase, next phase is the follicular phase. During this phase, the growth of the ovarian follicles occur under the influence of follicle stimulating hormone. In turn, these follicles they release estrogen, and this estrogen is now responsible for the multiplication, or you can say the proliferation of the new endometrium lining of the uterus. That's why we also call it a proliferative phase also. Third comes the ovulatory phase. As the name indicates, it means somewhat associated with the ovulation. When the LH and the FSH, LH means the luteinizing hormone and the follicle stimulating hormone, they attain a peak level, that is in the mid of the menstrual cycle. The level of the estrogen also increases in the blood. The Graafian follicle ruptures. Remember here the LH is mainly responsible for the rupturing of Graafian follicle to release ovum. We call it ovulation. After this comes the luteal phase or the secretory phase. Once the Graafian follicle ruptures, the walls of the Graafian follicle converts into an endocrine tissue which is known as the corpus luteum, and this corpus luteum now starts secreting the another hormone known as the progesterone, which helps in maintaining the pregnancy. The uterine glands also start releasing certain glycogen like substances, and these glycogen like substances they play very important role again in more and more secretion of this progesterone, and which helps in implantation. Now hormonal control of the menstrual cycle. Certain hormones which I have already mentioned also, the FSH, LH, estrogens and progesterone, they play vital role especially in the menstrual cycle. In case if there is a deficiency of any hormone, or there is under secretion of any hormone, it may interfere with the menstrual cycle. We can better understand the menstrual cycle with the help of this graph or this diagram which has been taken from your textbook. Whenever we study this diagram, please you have to learn it to remember, because the questions are being generally asked from it. The ovarian follicle, the growth of the follicles one can be given, and the various stages are being generally asked. Their function is being asked. The graph can be asked. The role of the particular hormone on the walls of the uterus, the growth of the endometrium can be asked. So you have to be prepared for this. You can see now I'll be starting from the pituitary hormone, where it is being shown the FSH as well as LH. You can see in the beginning what is happening. The FSH and LH they start increasing. When they start increasing, what is the effect on the ovary? The follicles will start also growing. When these follicles are growing, the follicles will start releasing the estrogen. In the beginning, you can see the level of estrogen is less. So as soon as the follicles are growing, the level of the estrogen is also going up, but the progesterone is still very low. Then effect of this estrogen is on the walls of this endometrium. or the uterus. The endometrium lining, the cells of this, they are proliferating, they are becoming more and more thicker. In the mid, you can say here of the menstrual cycle, this LH is on peak, the FSH is also more, so which is resulting in the rupturing of this Graafian follicle. We call it ovulation. Corpus luteum, immediately this, you can say the walls of the Graafian follicle, which is turning, seems to be yellow here. This is the corpus luteum, endocrine in function. It starts releasing the progesterone, and this progesterone will act now on this uterine walls. The uterine walls, they will become more, endometrium will become more and more thicker than, and the more and blood will be poured into it, and they will become more thick. Later on, when the fertilization do not take place, what happens to this corpus luteum? It degenerates and it converts into a white tissue here. Now we call it corpus albicans, and it degenerates and it is being released with the menstrual flow. Now after this, fertilization and implantation. The ovum has been released, it goes in the fallopian tube and now waits for the sperm or the spermatozoon. As soon as the spermatozoas they enter in the body of the female, they have to pave a long way from the vagina to uterus, and from the uterus to the fallopian tube. In ampullary isthmus junction, the fertilization normally take place. The acrosome, which I have already told you in the structure of the sperm in my previous video, this contain the sperm lysins. These are the enzymes which help in penetrating the sperm into the ovum. See, this is the structure of the ovum, where you can see the cells which are radiating around it. This forms the corona radiata. These corona radiata cells, they are glued by a chemical substance which is known as high hyaluronic acid. Now, and here this is the ovum. You can see the dark green lining here. This is the zona pellucida, and inner the pink one is the vitelline membrane of the ovum. When the sperm makes its entry, what happens now? The sperms with the acrosome, you can say, they start moving. Sperms acrosome also contain a chemical known as, or enzyme known as high hyaluronidase, and this high hyaluronidase, it breaks, you can say, this high hyaluronic acid, it reacts with the hyaluronic acid and paves its way towards the zona pellucida, and this enters through the zona pellucida. Again the enzyme, there is a anti-fertilizing, because the zona pellucida, it releases an enzyme, a chemical substance known as the fertilizin. To oppose it, anti-fertilizin is being released by the sperm, and finally it makes an entry into the ovum. Remember one more thing. Here, the fertilization, it prevents polygamy. Once one spermatozoa zone enters into the ovum, the remaining sperms, they remain outside. They are prevented to enter inside the ovum, and this is known as the cortical reaction. It is being done by the chemicals released by the ovum, because it allows only one sperm to enter over it. Coming to the next part, now see the fertilization is over. You can see this is the structure again from your textbook, which shows the uterus, the fallopian tube, the ovary, and the various development stages up to implantation. So in the first case, here it is the ovum, and here it is the fertilization process. Now after fertilization, zygote is being formed. The zygote divides by mitosis and forms the two cells here. We call them as blastomeres. These blastomeres, now they divide, redivide, and attain a 6, or you can say 8 to 16 cell stage here. This one, the same one, which we call it as morula. This morula later on, it trickles down. You can see in this diagram here, in the fallopian tube, this morula has trickled down in the uterus, and now the fluid enters inside it, and all the cells which you see inside the morula, they are shifted to one side, and a cavity, fluid filled cavity is being formed. This is called the blastocele, and the structure which is containing the blastocele, we call it a blastocyst. In a blastocyst, the outer lining is called the trophoblast, and the inner mass of the cell is also known as the embryoblast or the inner mass, also you can generally say. This blastocyst now it get implanted in the wall of the uterus. So now pregnancy and the embryonic development. As soon as the blastocyst comes in contact with the endometrium, what happens to it? I have just told you about the trophoblast. In this trophoblast, the outer layer, what happens here? The finger-like normally projections come out, and these finger-like projections, they enter inside the endometrium and remain bathed, you can say, in the mother's blood. The mother body also give the response, and as a result a tissue is formed between the you can say embryo as well as the mother. We call it placenta. Now these finger like projections are called the chorionic villi or villi. The structure, the placenta, now the embryo remain attached with this placenta for 9 months, that is a gestation period, and it keeps on taking in the nutrients, the oxygen, antibodies, and releases the waste from its body into the maternal blood. This is the structure which is showing the position of the fetus inside the uterus. You can see the placental villi here. You can see a cord which is known as the umbilical cord. This umbilical, by means of this umbilical cord, it remains attached with the placenta and keeps on draining the nutrients and remove the waste from its body. During the pregnancy also, what happens now? As soon as the female conceives, you can say, becomes pregnant. Here you can see uterine secretions also. Here you can see a plug, mucus plug is being formed at the cervix, you can say. It just closes the uterus and protects the embryo inside it. Now, hormones during the pregnancy. The placenta also acts as an endocrine gland. It releases the hormone human chorionic gonadotropin as well as human placental lactogen, which helps in maintaining the pregnancy. There is another hormone known as relaxin. During the pregnancy, it is being released by the ovary, and this hormone is generally released during the time of parturition, during the time of childbirth. So as soon as the embryo get implanted on the walls of the uterus, what happens? It start differentiating into three germinal layers. We call this stage as gastrulation. So three layers, you can see the ectoderm, the endoderm, and the mesoderm are being formed. Ectoderm is the outermost layer, endoderm is the innermost layer, and mesoderm is formed in between the ectoderm and the endoderm. That's why we all are triploblastic animals. We are coelomates also. In between the mesoderm, a fluid filled cavity is being developed, which is called the coelom, where the organs are being developed. Most of the organs are. So when the organs are being formed, we call this phenomena as organogenesis. Here one more thing is very important about the stem cells. The stem cells, you can say the inner mass in the blastocyst, you have seen that the inner mass cell which will form the embryo now. It consists of some cells which are known as the stem cells, and these have the potency to give rise to all tissues and the organ. Even the human umbilical cord, it consists of the stem cells. So during the childbirth, whatever, some people normally get the umbilical cord of the baby preserved. So in due course of time, if any organ fails, then these stem cells can be developed into the particular organ for organ transplantation. Embryonic development now during pregnancy. Now the blastocysts have been implanted, gastrulation is taking place, has taken place, organogenesis is also taking place. So now what are the organs, how the embryo is being developed, how the organs are being developed? Remember that The embryo's heart is formed after 1 month of pregnancy. So it is always advised to a pregnant lady to just go for her medical checkup. The heart sound can be felt by a doctor by the doctor on the stethoscope. The limbs and digits are formed at the end of this 2 months. Major organs in external genitalia are formed by the end of 12 months. First movement of the baby, of the fetus normally, occurs at 5 months. You can say fine hair, eyelids, eyelashes, they are formed by the end of 24 weeks. And now you can see the fetus is ready now to be developed, to be delivered from the body. It is completely developed at the end of 9 months. Now when the fetus is fully developed, then some signals arise from the fetus as well as the placenta for its removal, for its ejection from the body. We call it fetal ejection reflex. This is being asked sometime in the exam. Relaxin, I have already told you, it is also being released. So as a result, even you can say oxytocin from the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland, which is also being released now, which causes the contraction of the muscles of the uterus and which help in propelling the body from the body from baby from the body after the childbirth. Now how when the baby is being expelled out from the body through the vagina, the childbirth take, we call it a parturition. After parturition, what the baby required? The newborn baby required the food. It feeds on the mother's milk. Remember, during the first 2-3 days after the birth, the mother's mammary glands do not produce the milk. A yellowish, you can say pale yellowish fluid comes out from the nipples of the mammary glands, and we call it a colostrum. This colostrum, many people avoid it, but remember, this colostrum is rich in antibodies and it should be given to the baby to develop the immunity. This is all about the lesson. Hope you must have enjoyed. Please watch it. Thank you very much.